Looney Tunes Racing, a game that you probably had no idea existed. And you know what? I wouldn't blame you, because I also had no idea it existed until a little less than a year ago, while I was on my journey of playing obscure retro stuff. And for what it's worth, it's a pretty decent kart racing game. Sure, I wouldn't call it amazing, and it can get a bit repetitive, as I will explain in a little bit. But hey, it's a kart racing game for the PS1, and it has Looney Tunes in it, so what's not to like? Just for the record, I know it does seem like a pretty simple concept, but there's a bunch of car racing games for the PS1 that are just meant to be that. A fun go-to kart racing game, some of which are more obscure than others, with Crash Team Racing arguably being the most well-known of them all. But I would say every PS1 kart racing game has its own unique thing to it. And Looney Tunes Racing is no exception, so let's dive into it. There's a total of 4 modes in the game, but in this review I'm just gonna focus on both the Championship mode and the ACME missions. So let's start with Championship, which is pretty much the same as a Grand Prix, but with some changes that I'll explain in a sec. There's only 3 Championship Cups in the game, which are the Rascal, Stinker, and Despicable Cups, with each one having more tracks and being a bit harder than the last one. The game starts with only 6 characters unlocked, which are Bugs, Daffy, Lola, Marvin, Taz, and Coyote. But as you can see, the character roster has actually a shit ton of characters to unlock, which of course we'll get as we progress into the game. And so the racing starts, and one thing you will notice as you play this game is that it has some particular aspects that make it an experience that is unique. So let's go through them one by one. For starters, there's the items that you use. Most car racing games have a randomized selection of items that, for the most part, rely on what position the player is to determine what the item is gonna be. The further the player is from the first place, the better the item. But in Looney Tunes Racing, it's a bit different, since there's tokens that you collect with numbers on them, with each number adding up to a specific item in the game, meaning that you could use the most basic item by collecting a token with the number 1 in it, or you could just grind tokens until you get to the highest item on the list. You can get a pie, a bomb, a lightning cloud, a homing pie, an anvil, and an invincibility item, in that order. It's up to you to save the tokens to use whatever item you wanna use. There's also the obstacles in the tracks. Each track has ACME arches and some giant letter X's on the road. Every time a player goes through one of these ACME arches, an obstacle gets triggered in the track, and it takes place on the giant X on the road. You could use those arches to slow down the drivers in front of you, just like they could use them against you if you're ahead. And sometimes the game will get a little bit stupid and obstacles will hit you without you even noticing they have been triggered. And this is something that will happen a lot, so yeah. Fuck! That's pretty much everything when it comes to the aspects of the race itself. Now let's move on to the tracks. This aspect is probably the most notable and disappointing in my opinion when it comes to the game. There's only a couple themes that get repeated numerous times in the game. Aside from a couple of standalone tracks which aren't repeated, you have field, desert, space, and medieval. As for the standalone tracks, there's one in one of the cups that seem pretty cool, which is a track that takes place in the Warner Bros. Studio, which is a massive 4th wall break, and for that, I applaud the game. There's also a couple bonus tracks that don't really belong to any cup, and you can play them on the single race mode. But yeah, this game is sadly pretty limited when it comes to themes, which sucks because there's always numerous themes to work with if you wanna do a car racing game, and make it as diverse as it can be. But that's just my opinion, and the tracks are still enjoyable overall. Now let's move on to the other mode that is pretty much gonna be the other half of the game, the ACME Challenge, which is a mission mode, kinda like the one in Mario Kart DS. We have 3 floors, each of them with challenges that increase difficulty as you progress through them. And you gotta beat them all to unlock a supposed museum feature that seems pretty interesting, and I gotta say, it does get stupid pretty quickly. Sure, you got some easy challenges like killing the enemies a certain amount of times, and also winning a race without being able to drift or brake. Nothing too uncommon. But then, there's challenges like having to collect the letters B, U, G, and S in the track, which is totally a unique concept by the way. And guess what? You gotta collect them in order. So if you get, let's say, the letter U before the letter B, it won't count. And part of me is like, sure, that doesn't seem too awful, but another part is like, why though? Like, I should just be able to collect the letters in whatever order I want to. It's not like it should matter anyway. Then there's a challenge where you have to complete 3 whole laps without hitting the walls. And this is in one of the medieval tracks. Medieval, castle, bunch of walls. Do you see the issue here? It's not impossible, but god is it hard to breeze through this track without hitting the walls, because of how fast you go and not thinking about being careful of not doing it. You have to brake in this challenge, and again, be careful or you're not gonna win. Luckily, you don't need to get in first place to win this, but you do get a better rank if you do so. Then there's this coin collecting challenge in space, which I didn't mind too much while recording footage of it, but it's still kinda obnoxious. Even more considering that you need to find a good route to be as fast as you can, because the time they give you to get all of these coins is a bit too limited. And the one I had issues with the most is the challenge where you have to beat 3 laps before the given time. And every time you beat a lap, you have less time to beat the next one. And again, it might sound easy, and it is in the first couple challenges, but when you get on the last one on this opera-themed track, it's complete bullshit. My biggest problem with this challenge is pretty much in the last lap. You need, and I mean it so hard, to not hit any wall, drift as much as you can, and get every boost funnel in the track to be as lucky as getting to the end in the very last second. I'm not cheating you. But that's all there is when it comes to challenges. After you complete all of that, you raise the bosses of each floor, which are Porky, Elmer, and Gossamer respectively. And these boss battles are short, but also not really exciting, because all you need to do is get to the finish line before them. You can't use weapons, they can't use weapons, and the tracks you raise them in are extremely short. So it doesn't really feel like a boss battle as much as it feels like just trying to get to the finish line before someone else. But anyway, we beat all of these challenges and we can see what the museum feature is about. So you know what? It was probably all worth it in the end. Let's see what this is about.
At last, let the banners fly and the doors swing wide. The ACME treasures have been found, thanks to you. Now we can reopen the world-famous ACME Museum. 3 cheers and a tiger for us all. Now all are welcome to see these fabulous ACME creations displayed in their proper places. Oh, heavens to gimbals, no. They just wouldn't do it. Phew, well, thank my lucky stars.
Pick an option, friend. Ladies and...
Is that it? Really? No feature? Just a stupid cutscene and nothing unlocked afterwards? Overall, this game is a pretty okay kart racing game. As I already said before, it's nothing too special, but at the same time, it does feel good to come back to every once in a while. Not as much as I will come back to something like CTR or Mario Kart DS, which are some of my favorite car racing games of all time, but it's still a decent game with some frustrating aspects here and there, and it has Looney Tunes in it. So, of course, that's gonna make me have some good expectations for the game, even if it turns out it kinda sucks. But this one, as repetitive and simple as it may seem, doesn't really suck. Could be a lot better, of course, but hey, it's still a decent Looney Tunes Racing game, so yeah, that's it. Hey, thanks for watching. It means a lot to me, and if you like this type of content, make sure to subscribe so I can keep making it. And also, let me know in the comments if there's a game you would like me to cover in the future. With that said, take care and I'll see you next time.